Welcome to Does It Matter by Brainy Ballers, where we dissect the game with cutting-edge analytics to give you the upper hand. We analyze everything from hand sizes to average depth of targets to uncover hidden trends that no one else sees. Say goodbye to guesswork and hello to data-driven domination. Because here at Brainy Ballers, we don't just watch the game, we understand it. So get ready, it's podcast time.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're getting into something that feels pretty intuitive for football fans. Does a wide receiver's catch radius, that bubble around them where they can snag a pass, does it actually predict how successful they'll be in the NFL?
Yeah, it's a great question. It seems like it should, doesn't it? A bigger target means more catches, right? So for this deep dive, we're drawing on a really extensive analysis. It's from a 75-part series called Does It Matter?, which looked at wide receiver data going all the way back to 2003.
Wow, 75 parts. Okay, so our mission here is to see if that gut feeling about catch radius actually holds up under the microscope.
Exactly. Does the data back up the intuition?
So how do they tackle this? What was the method?
Well, they're pretty careful about it. They zeroed in on the top 50 PPR fantasy football finishers each year since '03. And to make a fair comparison, they pitted the elite guys, the top 10 finishers, against a baseline group, specifically the receivers ranking 31st to 50th.
Ah, okay. So not comparing superstars to guys barely seeing the field. Makes sense.
Right. It gives you a more meaningful comparison without getting skewed by players who maybe only played a few snaps. And importantly, all the catch radius measurements they used came from Player Profiler.
Got it. So Player Profiler data, top 10 versus the 31 to 50 group. What did they find first off? Any immediate, aha moments?
Well, not quite an aha moment, but definitely an interesting trend started to show up, mostly from 2008 onwards. What they saw was that in 12 out of the 16 seasons they looked at closely, those top 10 fantasy receivers did have a slightly bigger average catch radius than the guys in that 31st to 50th bracket.
Okay, 12 out of 16 seasons.
Yeah.
So something might be there. A potential link, maybe?
Exactly. Potential is the key word. It wasn't, overwhelming, but it was enough to make them dig a bit deeper.
So where did that digging lead? Did they try to find, an ideal size or range?
They did. They created this differences chart, basically looking at how performance changed with different catch radius measurements, and they landed on what they called an optimal range, somewhere between 10.6 and 11.4 for the catch radius metric.
Okay, 10.6 to 11.4. And what was special about that range?
Receivers falling within that specific range had a 12.0% higher chance of finishing in the top 10 compared to the baseline group.
12%. Okay, now that starts to sound a bit more concrete, like maybe they'd found the secret sauce.
It certainly seemed promising on the surface. You
Right.
see a specific range, you see a percentage increase. It feels like you're onto something solid.
Right. But here's the crucial part, I guess.
Do you want to start dominating your drafts? At BrainyBallers.com, we've researched every metric under the sun for you to find which ones are best linked to fantasy points. You can access hundreds of metrics to sharpen your scouting ability so you know which metrics matter and which are just noise. Stop guessing on which thresholds to look for within each metric. Big numbers can be misleading or irrelevant. Our Ultimate Athlete Blueprints reveal essential scouting metrics, their importance and benchmarks within each metric that help predict a player's probability of being a success or bust. Elevate your scouting ability with Brainy Ballers' Ultimate Athlete Blueprints today. Click the link in the description. Now back to the show.
Finding a trend is one thing, but does it hold up statistically? How much does it really matter?
Precisely. And this is where it gets, less exciting for the catch radius fans. They ran the numbers using the Pearson correlation coefficient. That stat that measures how strongly two things are linked.
What did it show?
It showed basically nothing significant. The Pearson value was just 0.086.
0.086. Now, basically, that number tells you how strongly two things are linked. You usually want to see something like 0.1 or higher, especially in sports science, to say there's a meaningful connection. So 0.086 is below that threshold.
And just for perspective, something like QB Draft Capital, which most people agree is a significant predictor, has a Pearson value around 0.219. Much stronger signal.
Wow. So despite that initial trend, despite finding that optimal range, the hard statistical analysis says catch radius on its own doesn't significantly predict fantasy production.
That's the bottom line. Statistically speaking, there's no significant correlation there.
Huh. Okay. Anything else? Did they look at whether this has changed over time?
They did, and that adds another layer. They looked at decadal differences. And that optimal range we talked about, the one that already had a pretty small effect,
Yeah.
it actually showed up even less frequently in the most recent decade compared to earlier ones.
So not only is it not statistically significant overall, but its limited predictive hint seems to be fading even more over time.
That's what the data suggests. Its relevance seems to be declining.
So wrapping this up then, that initial feeling, watching a receiver make an amazing extended catch, it might look impressive, but the numbers say don't put too much stock in just the reach itself.
Right. It's a really good reminder that what seems obvious isn't always borne out by rigorous analysis. Those subtle trends were interesting, sure, but they just didn't cross the threshold into statistical significance as a standalone factor.
So for anyone listening, scouts, fantasy players, evaluators, the takeaway is pretty clear, right?
Absolutely. Think of catch radius as maybe one small piece of a much larger puzzle. It should only be considered as part of a whole evaluation strategy alongside many other factors. It should definitely not be the main thing you look at.
Don't use it in isolation. Makes total sense. And that leaves us with a bigger question to chew on, doesn't it? With all the data we have now in sports, how many other metrics that feel important might actually be less significant than we assume when you really break them down?
It's a fascinating thought. What does that mean for how we spot talent, how we build teams? Maybe we need to constantly question our assumptions.